and welcome. Express entry continues to be something which we love, right? And as I was saying earlier, that the choo-choo train goes on, and that is always so amazing to see when IRCC continues to conduct their draws and continues to do what we expect them to do as far as express entry is concerned. Otherwise, all of us get into this kind of a tizzy, right? Whether the draws will happen, whether they will not happen, when they will happen, and then all the doomsday theory starts coming up. Express entry is closed, draws won't happen, IRCC has, or rather Canada has shut the doors, and no more immigration, etc., 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 etc. Off the bat, first things, and even if there are any Canadians watching this, I doubt it. Why would you want to watch this? But if you are watching this, then even for you guys, Canada needs immigration, whether we like it, whether we don't like it. This is something which we have to accept, which we have to live with, which we have to understand. And regardless of how it looks like, and I know over the last few years, it is not looking, it's not painting a very good picture. And therefore, the sentiment in Canada about immigration is quite negative. But in spite of that, I don't expect, or I forget about me expecting, immigration is not going anywhere. The sooner we accept it, the sooner we realize, the better it is. Now, if immigration is not going to go anywhere, how do they sort out the mess that has been created over the last 4 years? I wouldn't even say pre-COVID, because it's during the COVID when the mess actually started becoming messy, if you want to call it. So over the last 4 years, what happened is something which we will have to bear the brunt of for the next couple of years. And I was having the same discussion with Stephen Murins, Tamara Mosher, Kubeir, and Diana yesterday. I'm not sure if you watched that live stream. Pretty solid nuggets of wisdom if you wish to sort of have a look at it again. But there also the discussion was the same, that immigration is going to continue. Of course, that's not going to go anywhere. But what we are seeing right now, the problems, the difficulties, can the draws come down, scores come down, not come down? What I've realized, and I've been watching and tracking the data since 2016, but what I've realized over all these years is that every year there comes a time when the benchmark has been set. So, for example, in the years of 2016, the scores were quite high because in 2016, I'm not sure how many of you realize or know that the job offer could actually get you 600 points. So the LMIAs that we talked about and the LMIA points that were removed, it used to be 600 points. And then in November 2016, that 600 points were reduced to 50 and 200 points. But at that point of time, the scores used to be really high, 700s. 700s was quite common, was quite normal. 2015, 2016, if you go back and see this. But then the number of invitations also was very, very less, right? So they would only conduct draws of 1,500, 2,000, occasionally, not that frequently. And so that was the reason. But when they got into late 2016s, and then they got into 2017s, and then as they continued in 2017, things started getting much better. With regards to the draws, especially after they removed the job offer points, which was a big deal. But at that point of time also, and I'm giving you this history lesson only so that you have some context with what we are talking about. Otherwise, I'm sure most of you are not interested. All you're interested is that when is the next CEC drop? When is the drops scores going to drop to 505, 504, 503 or below 500? And when is the next Francophone draw? That's what most of you are interested in. But if you understand the context, if you understand the history, in most cases, you would also be able to get the answers to all these kind of questions yourself. So bear with me for a bit before we actually get to some real meaty, juicy points as well. So as we prod along in the history lessons, each year you would have seen some sort of a benchmark that was established in terms of the scores. So 2016, as I was saying, the benchmark was quite high, 700-ish, 600-ish also sometimes. But when we came down to, it actually dropped down to 500s towards the end of 2016. But when we came into the year of 2017, the scores actually started coming down. They came down from 500s, they came down to 490s, they came down to 480s, 470s. And 31st of May, 31st of May, 2017 was the lowest ever general express entry draw. And I'm saying general because at that point of time, there was no specific categories that they were conducting draws. They would always conduct a general draw. There was no separate PNP draw, separate this, separate that. So everything was included in one. And the general draw lowest score ever was 413, which happened on 31st of May 2017. And why that is so important? Because that's where it bottomed out. People expected that the scores are going to drop further to 410s, 405, 400s, and even then, obviously, the hopes, how hopes are. People like us were forever hopeful. And then the expectation was that the scores are going to go down to 300s because that's what we expect. Things changed on the 6th of June 2017. On the 6th of June 2017 is when IRCC introduced the points for siblings, 15 extra points if you have sibling in Canada, and 15 extra points if you were also Francophone, French category. That was the first time, 6th of June, this was introduced. And knowing IRCC, the way their systems work and the glitches that there are, that basically meant that the express entry draws had to be stopped because they had to accommodate all these changes. Those are also the golden times when everybody who had a score of 400 CRS plus would get an ITA from Ontario for under the human capital priorities. That was the golden age as far as Ontario was concerned. Everybody. And if you were not going to get an ITA, just create a new profile. You would get an ITA from a notification of interest from Ontario. Just all you had to do was get a CRS of 400. However, there were 40 on 31st of May 2017, there were only 42,000 people in the express entry pool. So that gives you the understanding. With only 42,000 people in the pool, 413 was the lowest score. Nowadays, 240,000 people in the pool, scores are highs of 500. The point I'm trying to make is that every year we realize that score balances out. So as though the score had touched 413, as we moved into the year of 2017, the balanced out score was not 410s, 415s, 420. The balanced out score became 440. Because what happened is that 4 weeks gap that happened from the 6th of June. So 31st of May, the draw happened. No draw the entire month of June. Towards the end of the month of June, there was one draw, and the score had gone up to 442 or I don't remember, 438 or 440. People were expecting a lower score, didn't happen. More people got interested. 413, low score. A lot of people were interested. More people jumped into the pool. Scores went up. Scores never came down. And 440 became the new common, like a new standard, like you must get 440s. And the years of 2017, 2018, 2019, the scores remained pretty much at this level. They would vary between 438s, 435s, but never too low. Never got back into 420s again, and always stayed at 440s, 450s. Even there were occasional draw. Yeah, 450 was the occasional draw. It was only after that when we hit 2021, 2022. Of course, there was this big, 1.5 year gap when there was no draws in express entry at all. And then there was this crazy draw of 75 CRS score. And then you had seen a spate of draws when you had a lot of express entry CEC class draws, lower scores, which was also, what can I say? And when we got back into the regular way of doing business, back to post-COVID, scores went right up, right? 549, that's what we started with. They did again drop down because that time IRCC, this was 2023, intentionally, there was an intent. IRCC needed to bring the scores down because the scores are going out of hand. They conducted back-to-back draws, 7,000, 7,000, 7,000. That was in the month of March 2023. What that did is 21,000 invitations were issued and scores dropped right back to 481. When the scores came down to 481, the new standard that was established was not at 481. The new standard that was established in 490s, because 481 was only one-time occurrence that happened. That was the lowest that it went down to. But then again, very quickly, with all these gaps that continued to happen, and then there were the category draws, and then there was the postal code changes, then there was the knock changes. Every time IRCC started putting gaps in the draws, the scores kept shooting up. And today, after giving you all these, there's this gyan about this history lesson with all these things that have been happening now as of today, the new benchmark standard is not 490, it's not 500, it's not even 510, it is 520 as of right now. Okay, now obviously as we move in this whole year, if IRCC continues conducting these draws, you should see this standard line or the benchmark line dropping further, but expect going forward, expect 510s as your standard benchmark or a standard line. And why am I saying that? And this was in line of the discussion that people will need to, and I was saying that immigration is not going to go anywhere. Yes, immigration is not going to go anywhere. Canada is going to be a bit more restricted with how they invite people. You already know this year the quota is 395,000, down from 480,000 for last year, so about 100,000 people less. It was supposed to be 500,000 this year, so we now only have 395, so 105,000 targets reduced for this year. Next year, reduce 15,000 further, so we'll be 380,000. Following year, again 15,000 reduced, we're going to be going to 365,000. Plus, we also have caps on international students. Canada has already reduced the foreign workers population in Canada by giving restrictions on postgraduate work permits, by not giving spouse open work permits anymore to a lot of categories of people who earlier were eligible. So with all these, and of course, visit visas are not that easy to come by. So with all these restrictions that IRCC is now conducting, or rather is now enjoying, you now have the situation where becoming a temporary resident in Canada by itself is not that easy anymore, right? Study visas not being approved, work permits not being approved, visit visas not being approved. Now you also have restrictions on the refugee claims, which is actually a welcome move. If you've been in Canada for at least 1 year, you cannot file a refugee claim anymore. With all of this, for the next 2 years, don't expect scores to come down a lot. And the reason why I'm saying this is because there are nearly 4 million temporary residents in Canada. So if you are outside Canada, at this point of time, Canadian immigration has pretty much closed doors. I mean, I don't even have a problem saying that to you guys, because even if you are thinking category draws, like people were thinking, all this halla balla was made, education, yay, teachers, yay, everybody come to Canada. Like all these people who are creating these TikTok reels and dancing around and prancing around. Well, the first education draw was at 479. Don't expect the next education draw to be lower. Expect it to be higher. Why? Because every time a draw happens, more people jump into the pool who are now excited that they would also be getting one. Plus, ever since category draws came into the play, and this is my pet peeve, and you guys already know it if you've been watching this, that I am not in the favor of category draws with only 6 months of experience, because it's a joke. Now, people who are in categories, of course, they don't want to agree with me because it's in their favor. Why should they agree, right? 6 months is, I mean, you're getting to be eligible in category. Why should you agree with me? But overall, and even you guys who are also eligible in categories, even you guys in the heart of your heart, deep in your heart, what I'm saying is true. These categories are a joke. Most of you guys who actually are now eligible in these categories, most, not all, of course, quite a few of you are genuine candidates there as well, but a lot of you are there only because you want to be eligible in the category draw, but you have no intention of following through with that particular education. The early childhood educator assistants, not early childhood educators, the PSWs, the healthcare workers on the assistant nurses, pharmacy assistants. What else is there? Some trade categories. There are, of course, cooks, right? Suddenly everybody is a cook. Insurance agents. Suddenly, IT guys changing their occupation from software developers now to become cybersecurity specialists. So all these changes that are happening will result in the category draws not going down. I mean, because more people are now adding themselves in, because they've realized that the easiest way now to get through would be through a category draw. If your scores are not above 500. Then the other options is this. I mean, look at the healthcare draw. IRCC made a joke of it by inviting only 500 people in 2 draws, 500, 500. Scores 508, then 508, 509, and then 504. How can people from outside Canada get 504? It's not going to happen. And it's all then even trade category, a lot of people are anticipating. I had a recent consultation with somebody who was so optimistic at a score of 439 to get a draw invitation under trade category. Why? Because Last year, the previous draw under the trade category was, I think, 436 or 435. I don't remember exactly. 436. And this person thought that having 3 points more would probably get him a draw, and he was like quite geared up. He wanted to sign up for services, etc. And I had to break it to him that things have changed. You now have, first of all, 25 knock codes under trade category. Earlier there were only 10. You have cooks who have been included. Now, nothing to do, no offense towards cooks or whatever, but at the same point of time, why were cooks included in trade category? They could have included them in a separate category. They could have put them in a food and agriculture category, for that matter. They brought them into trades category, and by that, what has happened is so many individuals who are cooks who actually have good scores, 450, 460, 470, 480. There was this pool distribution that I shared a couple of weeks back, and that showed about 1100 to 1500 cooks with score of, I think, 470, 480 plus. So when you're going to conduct a trade category draw, what scores are you expecting, right? It can't be low. I'm anticipating anything above 460, 470 could be a trade category draw. Of course, it also depends on how many invitations they issue there. So when you take a broad look at this, what is happening right now in Canada with this category draws, scores there, Canadian experience class, 4 million people who are temporary residents, so many people studying master's degrees, so many people able to score well in English language. CLB 9s and 10s are not a rare sight anymore. Almost a lot of people can get that done. And then you have the situation of Francophones or the French speakers, whereby these individuals will be able to get 62 points, up to 62 points if they are CLB 7. So many people now, obviously, learning French and actually getting to that level. It's not, again, something which people don't do or not doing it. As we move along, okay, as we move along, you have to understand that out of these millions of people who are currently in Canada on temporary resident status, more and more people are now beginning to realize they may not have an opportunity once they finish their studies, once they finish their 1 year, 2 year of work experience. And therefore, they now need to make those decisions, now need to make those changes, now need to sort of upskill themselves. So suddenly more people are taking master's degree even after they have got their work permit. Their work permit is expired. Now they do not know what to do. They want to continue staying in Canada. I said, okay, let me start doing my master's degree. I'll get 15 extra points if they already had diploma in Canada. Plus master's degree will also give them points. Plus it will get them some more time to buy. Plus they might be eligible under Ontario, or once BC opens up, then the BC International Postgraduate Stream. So some options there. A lot of people then obviously I know a few people who, in order to learn French and really do it faster, have moved from Ontario to Quebec so that they can surround themselves with French speakers and learn the language faster and better. Good idea. Why not? But with all of this happening, okay, quotas going down, and with all these people trying to upskill themselves, master's degree becoming quite common and routine, CLB 9s and 10s becoming quite common and routine, 2 years of Canadian experience is not a big deal. And then the biggest caveat over the last 1 year, actually more than 1 year, but I'll just give you an example of last 1 year. More and more people have either gone back to their home countries to gain that 1 year of foreign work experience, or have also started working remotely. Now, remote work experience, while in Canada, remote foreign work experience is still in a gray area. There were a couple of refusals and PFLs there as well. But largely, if you have proper documentation to establish, if you can prove it, you should be able to get through with this. Foreign work experience, you're going outside, you're going back to your home country, you're gaining your foreign experience. Now, if you're a smart aleck, you're a smart person who has learned to understand the game and who has strategized, when you're working outside Canada, you probably will get 6 months of experience in one category, like, for example, I don't know, education category as an early childhood educator assistant, another 6 months of experience in healthcare category or a trade category as a cook, as a carpenter, plumber, whatever the other occupations are, or 6 months of experience as a pharmacy assistant. Because categories don't need more than 6 months to be eligible, to qualify. So now suddenly, with that 1 year of foreign work experience, you are eligible under the Canadian experience class with a very high score, because now you've got extra 50 points because you already had 2 years of Canadian experience. So extra 50 points for your foreign work experience. Plus, because you managed to get 6 months in 2 different occupations, you also are now eligible in 2 different categories. I mean, suddenly you now have options with 3 different streams, high score, and yeah, I mean, what's to stop you? This is going to be the face of how the scores and this express entry, which will play out for the remainder of 2025, 2026, 2027. At least for the next 2-3 years, this is not going anywhere unless IRCC smartens up and changes the conditions around the category draws, or once we get into the next year, then completely categories are changed. I don't expect too many changes in categories at this point of time. Maybe some knocks being removed, some knocks being added as they have done in the past. But by and large, I don't see many categories being changed. Why? And you know why? Because very recently, not very recently, a couple of days back, within this last week, they have announced that they are changing the requirement of field of study for postgraduate work permit holders. So they are aligning the fields of study with express entry priority occupations, which basically means that only if you are studying in a specific field of education would you be eligible to get a postgraduate work permit. And these fields of education are in line with the fields of occupation priority in express entry. So when you are combining these two separate programs, right? Postgraduate work permit is a temporary residence program. You're bringing it in line with the express entry priorities. When you're aligning these two, it basically gives you a message that these categories are here to stay, at least for some time, right? Also, what did they do is earlier, cooks, if you were studying any cooking program or field of education is for cooks, those programs were earlier not eligible for postgraduate work permit. Now, with this new change, which has happened 2 or 3 days back, cooks, a study program where the field of education is for cooks, that is also included in the postgraduate work permit eligibility. So that tells you that these categories are here to stay. They're not going anywhere, at least for the next couple of years. This is what the signs are saying. I'm not saying it. This is what they're saying. And with this, you can then strategize, you can then plan, you can figure out your way around. Now, a lot of people asking about Francophone, French categories. What's happening with the French? And why are the French draws not happening? First of all, why would you expect a French draw to happen every single 2 weeks or bi-weekly or every month? I mean, I know last year what they did from July to December, there was a spate of draws. Every month there was one Francophone French category draw. So people started anticipating every month there should be a draw. This year, what did they do? In the month of February, they went bonkers. They started issuing draw after draw after draw for Francophones until they completely cleared out the pool with some high-ranking profiles. Scores went right down to 379. They issued 18,500 invitations already this year for the Francophone category. But don't expect that to happen every month, because if you start expecting that to happen every month, you're fooling yourself, and then you will fall into that trap of being very, very disappointed. Instead, be aware of what the data is. And the data says that last year they issued, do I have that number here? Let me just quickly check if I do. Yeah, I do have it here. So last year they issued 23,000 invitations in 11 French category draws. 11 draws happened last year. So 12 months, 11 draws. Obviously, you were anticipating the draw to happen every month, but they issued only 23,000 draws, 23,000 invitations. This year, they are not conducting a draw every single month, but they have already issued 18,500 invitations. That should tell you something. From last year to this year, there is a bit of an increase in the number of quotas allocated for Francophones. It's not a very big increase for this year, but for coming year, there is a 50% increase. Why? Because this year the quota was about 8% for the entire economic immigration, or rather for all the three out of the 395,000, the 8% are supposed to be for Francophones. That is their target. But for next year, that they are planning, which you will all come to know about in the month of, I think, 1st of November, if not 30th of October, at least on 1st of November, when our favorite new immigration minister, I forget, we haven't even seen her around, right? So she hasn't been making any public appearances, so we haven't really been even seeing her around. So when Lena Diab, when she makes the announcements of the new immigration targets or immigration levels plan, you will see that the numbers have gone up for the Francophone or the French immigrants, French immigration to 12%, increased by 50%. Right now, the draws that are going to be issued henceforth from next month onwards are largely targeting the 2026 quotas. Why? Because most of the people who will be getting ITAs henceforth or next month onwards, because there is no fixed date cycle. It could be at any point of time. Let's say July, August onwards. Most of the invitations that are being issued now in express entry are largely targeting the permanent resident quotas for 2026, because that's how it works. They issue the invitations to you. You have 60 days to complete your application. And once the application goes into process, the average processing time is about 6 months, which basically means people who will be getting invitations in July, August, September, most of them, not all, but most of them won't become permanent residents this year. They will all become permanent residents in 2026. Therefore, they all contribute to targets for next year. So therefore, with that in mind, considering that the Francophone immigration targets are going to be improved for next year, my expectation, my anticipation is that the French draws will happen. French draws will continue. So far, only 18,500 invitation. Last year was 23,000. Even if we consider 23,000 as a number and add some percentage to it, not 50%. Remember, ITAs are not being increased by 50%. The total immigration quotas, which is 395,000 for this year, 380,000 for next year, that will have a 12% increase of the French. That will be the French will contribute, or the Francophones will contribute 12% to that total target. They could even be invited under CEC because their scores are very high at 500 plus, right? But they will still contribute towards the French quotas, even if they got through with CEC. If they got through with PNP, they will still contribute towards the French quotas, right? If they got through with the home care worker pilot, they would still contribute towards the French quota. So people start thinking that 12% is only for express entry ITAs and the category. That's not how it works. Therefore, do expect to see more than 23,000 being issued for this year. That's for certain. And with, I would say, in the range of 27,000 invitations, which basically means if 18,500 have been issued, so you're expecting about 9,000 to 10,000 ITAs. I would be very skeptical for 10, but about 9,000 more ITAs to be issued for Francophones only, French category only. But if they issue all 9,000 together, then of course, again, you'll be complaining that, they issued all these ITAs, now the scores are not going down. So therefore, have a bit of patience, because French draws will resume at some point of time. I can't tell you when, but it will happen. And when they do happen, you will see a scores in the range of mid 400s to high 400s. Again, depends on the number of invitations. But that's how the total outlook is. My speculation, the next draw, express entry Canadian experience class, if it is to happen 2 weeks later, because the last draw will just happen, right? I'm going to talk about that in a bit. If it is to happen, you will see a score drop. Now, last score drop from 529 to 521, which was the last express entry draw this week, was 8 points. Don't expect 8 points drop every single time, because now you are moving into the area of the pool where the large accumulation of the profiles is there, right? We have about 22,000 people in the express entry pool with score of 500 plus. The large concentration is 510 below, okay? But then there is still a good concentration of profiles in the range of 510 to 520 as well. So from here on, don't expect 8 points drop, expect probably 3 to 4 points drop, and that's how it will keep progressing downwards. And once it gets down to 509, then the drop will be even slower, again, depending on the number of invitations being issued. But this is how it is looking like. STEM, I do expect a draw, at least one, if not more than one. Trades, I do expect a draw, if not one, at least two for sure. At least that's what happened last year. Healthcare, I absolutely expect another draw for sure. This time, hopefully, not just 500 kind of invitations, but probably 1,500 to 2,000. And similarly, I also do expect a draw for education. This is probably the first half of the year now that is getting over. Now we're getting into the second half of the year. You'll see the second round. Now, if they did not conduct a STEM category draw or a trade category draw already, maybe they will only conduct one draw for these categories, but hopefully a more significant sized draw, if nothing else. But also keep in mind, also bear this in mind, that every time they conduct a category draw, they will not conduct a CEC draw. And whenever they don't conduct a CEC draw, you know what happens, right? There's a gap, and that's why more people have gotten added into the pool, and therefore the drop is slower. My expectation for the remainder of the year, 6 months remaining, in 6 months, you can anticipate roughly 12 to 13 draws, right? If you go by bi-weekly kind of a thing. If we expect 12, 13, maybe 14, if we are really lucky, of which you have French, STEM, healthcare, trades, food and agriculture, at least one draw will be happening there. Did I forget one? I think I forgot one. Healthcare, trades, STEM, food and agriculture, education. So with these 6 categories, which everybody is aware of, and even if we expect French, at least let's say 3 draws, at least, could be more than 3, but at least 3 draws. Categories for everybody else, let's say at least 1 to 2 draws, depending on which category it is. Now, we've also seen in the past, they would actually do 2 categories in the same week. So if they have done that, so approximately 4 to 6 cycles of the draws may not be not be Canadian experience class draws. Only IRCC draw better. Now, if we have to anticipate 12 to 13 draws and 4, I'm just going to go on to the optimistic side, and 4 cycles of the draw are for categories. I would think more than 4 cycles, but 4 cycles of the draw are categories. That gives you with only 7 or 8 cycles of experience class draws, Canadian experience class. Now, if there are 7 to 8 cycles of Canadian experience class draws, and if they continue with the 3,000 invitations, which I anticipate that should be more than 3,000 at some point of time, I'm really hoping to see a 4,000, 5,000 kind of a draw at some point of time at least. Or if they have a gap, then at least compensate that with the 4,000, 5,000 kind of an ITA draw. But if you're going to have only 7 or 8 cycles of Canadian experience class draws, then don't expect the scores to go below 500. That's the first one. Don't expect, because it's not going to happen in the sense, because the math is not going to math, right? The math is not mathing it this way. You have 22,000 people. If they only conduct draws, let's say 7 to 8 cycles, and every 2 weeks, if it's a consistent draw, every 2 weeks, about 1,000 people are getting added. And if they conduct a draw of 3,000, means only 2,000 are getting reduced from the pool, right? And if they have to do 7 or 8 draws, with only 2,000 getting removed from the pool with this difference of profiles, that basically tells you how many? 8 to the 16, right? Only 16,000 profiles will get removed from the pool. We have 22,000, means 4 to 5,000 still get left. And where are those 4 to 5,000 going to be? At the lower end of the pool, 504, 505 numbers, right? This gives you an idea of what to expect and what not to expect. So the lower scores, lower profiles who are sitting below 507, 508, you guys need to do something with your scores. You guys need to push that scores up in whatever manner you can, even if it is retaking IELTS or CELPIP. If you can get those 3 extra points or 6 extra points from CLB 9s to CLB 10, now is the time to make sure that you've done it and you're already in the pool. Because all these calculations that I'm telling you are quite simple. They're not rocket science. I don't have any inside information. I'm just laying it out to you the logical way of the way I am thinking and the way the numbers are relating. And that gives you an idea how to look at this. Of course, absolutely. If there is a larger size draws, there is a draw of 4,000, 5,000, then you might get to the numbers of 507, 508 sooner. But even from there on, the drop to 505, 504, 503, 502, that's a far-reaching territory. I'm not even sure if we are going to get to that number or not. We're going to stay forever hopeful for sure, and hope we get to that. But it's looking tricky. It's looking difficult, and therefore, in your own benefit, if you can improve your scores, then please do. Getting to the weekly roundup, that's what we are here for. Very quickly we will run, because then there are so many questions that we have. Express entry, of course, Canadian experience class draw was conducted this week on the 26th of June. The score was 521 with ITAs being issued of 3,000. Of course, we have spoken at length about the draws and the anticipation and speculation. And provincial nominee program also conducted a draw, rather express entry PNP draw was also conducted, and this happened on the 23rd of June. 742 was the score. Number of invitations, why don't we have that? Oh, 503 invitations were sent out, of course. And then we've already discussed this at length. As of today, 41,845 profiles, ITAs have been issued, compared to last year when 98,903 invitations were issued for the whole year. So we are at a halfway mark, and we are pretty much on target. So if it was issued at 98,903, there was a drop of about, I think, I don't remember what the percentage point was, but there was a drop because it was supposed to be 500,000 people this year. The targets went down. It is now 395,000. But the economic immigration, this is the express entry, that numbers have remained the same or similar. Last year was it was supposed to be 117,000. It's today, I mean, for this year, it's 124,000. And as you all know, express entry and ITAs are all for federal high skilled category. So therefore, that number of ITAs that you are seeing will pretty much remain the same. But in this 98,903, there is a PNPs that were issued, which was 15,483 last year. But then last year, the quotas was 110,000. This year, the quotas have been slashed by 50%. So expect fewer nominations under the PNP quotas. And therefore, as you can see, provincial nominee programs this year, so far in the first half of the year, only 5,495. Moving forward, don't expect too many nominations to be seen there in express entry. Probably a similar number, between 4,000 kind of a number. And that tells you that you can expect roughly 35 to 40,000 ITAs more complete. No, actually, sorry, 45,000, approximately 45,000 ITAs more as we move along for the remainder of the year. And if you have to get 45,000 ITAs more, I would anticipate another at least 20 to 25,000 ITAs coming only for express entry. And if 25,000 ITAs have to come for express entry, and we already discussed in each of the draws, about 8 cycles of express entry draws, if they issue out 3,000 ITAs for each, that's 24,000. That's what we're talking about. The pool will still be left with about 5 to 6,000, at least 5 to 6,000 profiles which score 500 plus. And therefore, the lower 500s need to do something to bring that scores up. This is a 6-month review. Just going to skip through this very quickly so we can get to more meatier subject. I'm not going to go too much into the detail here today. Express entry pool breakdown. This year it's about, now it's at about 22,900. This was the pool breakdown that we saw as of 23rd of June. 3,000 more profiles have been cleared. So this number would now actually stand at 19,947, 19,947, which is approximately 20,000 profiles in the pool. Prince Edward Islands conducted a draw, which was, I don't have the date here, but yeah, Prince Edward Islands continued to conduct the draws. They invited a total of 52 invitations. They issued 52 invitations, only one under the business entrepreneur stream. BCPNP reports strong performance under the amid federal cuts. Their quotas have been dropped from 8,000 last year to only 4,000 this year. And they have already announced earlier that they're going to not be sending out invitations under most streams. I already told you earlier, postgraduate work permit eligibility criteria has changed again. They have now removed 178 programs, and they have added 119 new programs. So please, if you are going to be applying for a study permit anytime soon, then please make sure that you check the postgraduate work permit eligibility of your program to ensure that you are not shortchanged once you get to Canada and start studying here. Canadian citizenship rates see a decline, but then that's been happening for quite some time. I'm not going to discuss too much about the departmental plans amongst the immigration caps, because this has to do, this will continue. They will continue to ensure 5% cap for the temporary residents. They're going to see that the number of permanent residents is not going to go over 1%. That is starting in 2027. The IRCC's refusal rates of applications has surged by 61%. Can imagine, right? I mean, 61% applications being refused. That is your visa, visit visa, study permits, work permits, and even permanent residence applications to an extent. So the number of applications that were earlier being refused versus now, even PR applications, has really, really gone up. And therefore, if you are submitting a PR application as of today, you have to be very careful with the kind of information you are entering, with the kind of documentation you're providing. Even the smallest mistakes are no longer being forgiven or being spared by IRCC. McGill University tops the Canadian university in list of universities in the global rankings, so that's awesome. Canada ranks 7th globally for work-life balance. That is provided you can find a job in the first place. I understand the unemployment rate is now touching 16% in some areas. IRCC has launched selections for the Immigration Consultants Board. This is for the position of the director for CICC. If you're interested, well, make sure you apply for it. Canada sees continued decline in the visitor arrivals. Of course, this has to do a lot to do with whatever is happening in the US. But even people from the US, there's a number which has been declining. Of course, if your visit visas are not going to be approved, if your study permits are not going to be approved, obviously you're not coming to Canada, right? So that number also continues to be declining. CVSA has suspended deportations to Israel amid the rising conflict. I mean, nothing too different there. Canada's travel sector is recovering, but it depends largely on the temporary labor. Well, that's the bit on my weekly roundup. I actually ran through the slides because I would like to sort of take over the questions as soon as I can and talk more about that. But hey, if you guys are still here and if you are watching this, then hit that like button, share this video to people who you also might think would be interested, and definitely don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And in case you did not know, if you're watching this for the first time, hi, my name is Kubeir. I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant. I love immigration as a subject, and because I also run this as a business, I am a CICC licensed consultant, and therefore can represent your applications to IRCC as well as even to the Immigration Refugee Board. And if you're looking for representation for your applications, then do consider us. We seem to be pretty decent at what we do, thankfully. Questions? And of course, yes, if you wish to book an appointment for consultation, then that's the link, askkubeir.com/appointment. And if you wish to reach out to us for your services, then support@askkubeir.com. That's the email. Look forward. Questions? Let's see. Have you heard any updates about the Francophone mobility work permit? Good question. No, I haven't. It was anticipated that on the 16th of June this year, this month, that the Francophone mobility program will revert back to its original criteria, which used to be CLB 7 as the French language proficiency and job offer in Teer category 0, 1, 2, 3. Now, on 16th of June 2023, it had been announced by our immigration minister then that they are providing a 2-year policy where they are reducing the language requirement to CLB 5 and job offer requirements to any category, TF 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And because it was supposed to be for 2 years, it was understood and that was the understanding that it would go back to the original criteria on 16th of June. But IRCC did not make any announcements. They did not make any changes. And as of today, the Francophone mobility program continues, and the criteria as far as the IRCC website is, it remains the same at CLB 5. So if you want to be taking the advantage of the Francophone mobility program, work permit, it's a temporary residence program. If you have French language proficiency scores at CLB 5 for your speaking and listening, and you have an interested employer who is willing to give you a job offer and is willing to create their employer account on the IRCC portal, enter all the details for your job offer, pay a fee of $230 for compliance fee, then you will be eligible to apply for a closed work permit, provided, of course, you have the background and the work experience to perform that job. And so therefore, it's a great option for people if they are looking to extend their work permits. If they are, so it is not only for people who are in Canada. You could be outside Canada, and if you have an employer who's wishing to offer you a job, plus you have the French language proficiency, then this is the Francophone mobility program that you should be targeting. First PR rejected, bridge open work permit on implied status right now, got invited the second time. Can I now apply for a new bridge open work permit or raise a web form for the old bridge open work permit? Well, your first bridge open work permit that you had already applied was linked to your first PR application, which has been refused. So when your bridge open work permit is going to be assessed and they identify that your PR application has already been refused, they will certainly refuse that bridge work permit as well. And therefore, you will then have to apply for a new bridge open work permit, and you would lose your status to apply with restoration. However, while this is happening and while you're in the process of all of this, there is no harm in raising a web form, sending the copy of your new AOR to IRCC through web form, and ask them to consider that bridge work permit against this AOR. There's no harm in requesting. And the way IRCC is, and they're so inconsistent, anything can happen. And because anything can happen and you're not going to lose anything and it's of no harm to you and no negative consequence to you, then you must certainly do it. And if they don't approve it, which is the right thing for them to do, then you know for a fact that you have to apply for a new bridge open work permit anyways. What documents are needed for bridge open work permit? Can we continue working if we apply a bridge open work permit one day before work permit expires? Are there any chances of bridge open work permit getting rejected? Last question first. Yes, there are chances of bridge open work permit getting rejected. You fill up incorrect form, you fill up the form incorrectly, you do not pay the fee, you do not have your AOR, or you haven't been approved in principle. Right? That's the requirement. Then your bridge open work permit can certainly be rejected. And of course, if your PR gets rejected, then also you get rejected. Then can we continue working if we apply for bridge open work permit one day before a work permit expires? Yes, because you would now be on a maintained status as a worker. And because you've applied for bridge open work permit, while your work permit was still valid, you would be on maintained status. You can absolutely continue working. And as far as the documents are required, well, the documents primarily, the most important one is your AOR, acknowledgement of receipt. Complete the form, provide your work permit copy, passport copy, provide your employment documents, provide the regular what you would provide in your work permit application. Recently got an ITA for one of my old jobs. I do have the offer letter and exit letter, but won't be possible to get experience letter with job responsibilities as the company closed. How to justify to IRCC? You can't justify this to IRCC, and IRCC does not accept any exemptions in these cases. You might try to tell them, oh, my company is closed or this and that. IRCC doesn't accept because they need to validate your knock code through a third-party reference. So if your company has closed down, it's tough luck. You're pretty much in a bad spot. Few things that you may do is reach out to your old boss, manager, supervisor, have them write for you your job description and get it notarized, make it an affidavit. You can reach out to the previous HR if possible, or somehow get through your archives, get the job description of your role at that point of time. But that's pretty much it. Because if you're not able to offer to IRCC a credible way for them to establish and verify and validate your knock code, and that can only be done by way of job roles and responsibilities obtained through a third-party reference, then unfortunately IRCC will not accept it. And self-attested documents, as in you claiming your own duties, that doesn't work. It may have happened in an isolated cases, and I know some agents say that you can do a self-attested document. I mean, think about it. How can you do a self-attested? I mean, I can write anything for myself, and I can say I have been working as a doctor, I've been working as an engineer, I've been working as a chief architect, or whatever I want to call it. What is the credibility in me, myself, claiming my own duties and responsibilities? It never made sense. It never made sense before, never makes sense now. So self-attested duties are not acceptable, and therefore third-party references is what you're looking for, and those are the most important. Currently, I applied for closed work permit along with restoration. So can I work remotely for Indian institute, salary in Indian account, and get foreign experience points? Technically, yes. If you are in Canada and you are now on a period when you have applied for restoration, means you don't have any status in Canada at this point of time, you can certainly work for your employer or any employer outside Canada, and that should still constitute towards foreign experience points. But bear in mind, remote work experience, as far as IRCC is concerned, should be gained while you are physically outside Canada. So remote is still a bit of a gray area. At least that's what we have seen in the past few instances. But I mean, until it makes its way to the federal court and there is jurisprudence on this, I guess it will remain in the gray area. But yeah, if you can, please make sure you have detailed documentation to prove your work experience. Can I boost IELTS scores to add spouse post-ITA? This is, again, I keep saying about gray areas, and that's another one. IRCC is very clear. Section A11.2, if you go and check on the IRCC website, it says very, very clearly that the time you received your ITA and the circumstances around when you got your ITA and the circumstances around the time when you are submitting your PR application, they should be the same. And if there is any changes over there, then your application may be refused. May is a big keyword. Now, in your case, had you added your spouse to your application before you got the ITA, your scores would be less. Means you're completing an spouse's IELTS during the process of having received an ITA and before submitting the application. Means these changes are happening after you have received your ITA. Therefore, tread with the caution. That's all I can tell you, because there is no clear answer to this question. There is no direct answer to this question. It will always be on discretion of IRCC. How can I legally continue my work if I receive ITA on implied status? Well, you can't. Whenever your dummy extension that you have applied, which is giving you maintained status, is refused, you will have to stop working. You can't work. You may apply for restoration. You may apply for bridge open work permit with restoration, but you cannot work until your new work permit has been approved. So there is nothing you can do about it. My EE profile with CRS 516 CEC eligible. Hold on. There is one thing, Ankit, what you can do is that because you have a dummy extension, you can send IRCC a copy of your AOR after you have submitted your PR application and request them to consider your dummy extension as a bridge open work permit. And if you are lucky, really lucky, they might accept it and then approve it as bridge open work permit, and then you can live happily ever after and continue working. But it has happened in few cases, so that's the reason why I'm saying it. E-profile 516 CEC eligible, expiring July 6th. When should I create a new profile to avoid missing any upcoming draws? Well, to avoid missing any upcoming draws, let the profile expire on 6th of July. And within the hour, once it expires, you create a new one. That is the only way you can make sure you don't do anything wrong. Because actually, 6th of July, next week, Sunday, you can create one on the 5th of July if you wish to, because that would be a Saturday. The chances of another draw on Saturday, pretty next to none. I live in Ottawa, got PR via Ontario PNP recently. Can I live in Gatineau, Quebec and work for company in Ottawa without violating PR? Commuting from Gatineau to Ottawa, very common here. How long I wait? Well, the thing is that you have got your nomination through the provincial nomination route, whereby you have expressed your intention to live and reside in that province, not work. Working in that province who nominated you, which nominated you, is not the criteria. Living and residing in that province is the criteria. So if you got your PNP via Ontario, you should live and reside in Ontario. You can work in Gatineau, that is not a problem, but you should be living in Ontario. And there is no specific time as to how long you need to wait, etc., etc. It all then boils down to your intention and whether you misrepresented your intention, whether you were looking to get your PNP, as in you didn't never wanted to live in Ontario, but you lied. So that is where the questions and the problems happen. But otherwise, there is no specific time as such. Working 35 hours as part-time in Tier 2 count as full-time? Yes, because full-time work experience is 30 hours per week. So as long as you can prove you were working 30 hours per week, it will be counted full-time. What's your thought about Tier 4 and 5 pathway then announced last year? Well, my thought is that nothing's going to happen to it. I think it's going to remain where it was as in just an announcement. As of right now, they are struggling to offer temporary residents a pathway for permanent residents. Uh, Even if they do announce a pathway, which is, I mean, always a freak possibility, it would be very restricted. It could be for specific categories like construction or some trades, and it would require you to have a job offer. That's for sure. There can be no category that they announce now which doesn't need a job offer. So it's, while I mean, I am not very optimistic about it. Of course, anything can happen. It's IRCC at the end of the day. But I would expect that they would be looking to have some job offers there for sure. CEC 511 by September, October. Any chances? Well, I gave you the math and the logic. You can do that by yourself. It's very difficult to speculate exact score by exact period of time as of right now. It all depends on how many invitations in each draw. CELPIP scores expiring next month with CRS 510. Will my score drop the day the CELPIP expires? Well, technically it should, but then knowing how express entry and how the systems work, I think it takes about a couple of days, but it does actually drop after that. Actually, it will not drop. Your profile will become ineligible. Your CRS score will not drop. You're asking if the CRS score will drop. So if your CELPIP profile is expiring, your profile will become ineligible because you no longer have English language scores to show your eligibility. Nothing. Ramesh says 3 years Indian experience shown in study permit, work permit. Prof has refs all hours, 2 years. I have no idea what you're asking me. If you have shown your work experience, Indian work experience in your study permit, work permit applications, as long as it was paid under a valid knock code, you have the documentation, then you should be able to claim points for it. If you, you have only 1 year of salary in the bank, then what about the remainder 2 years? Well, you can provide the documentation only for 1 year and then wait for IRCC to ask you if they need for other 2 years, and then you can give them explanation. Otherwise, you can just provide them pay stubs for the entire 3 years and bank statement for the last 1 year. Hopefully, it should get away. I mean, you should be able to get away because you do have ITRs to claim that anyways. I chose yes for valid job offer, but I'm on an open work permit post-ITA. Should I change it to no or just explain in LOE? You can change it to no. That's absolutely fine. And if you want to keep it there, you can leave it there. You can just add a copy of your job offer. That's also absolutely fine because you're not going to get any points for it anyways. Visitor in Canada and got P2 but need to go to India for an emergency TRV valid until 2026. If I want to travel, what are the options to come back? Well, if you got P2 and they do give you your COPR, then the way to come back would be by applying for PRTD. Don't try to travel on your TRV. There is a very high possibility at the departure airport, they might call the embassy and they might realize that you are now a permanent resident. They might refuse you, they might refuse to board you, and then you will have to come back and apply for PRTD anyways. So you may as well just apply for PRTD. Nowadays, the processing is quite quick. I think it's about 2 weeks or less, and they're quite fast with that. So yeah, you may as well do it the right way. Just answer that. I-94 departure entry missed. Is an LOE explanation enough? Well, I-94 departure entries are irrelevant as far as Canadian immigration is concerned. But from your side, just mention your travel dates correctly in your travel history and you're absolutely fine. If you want to add a letter of explanation, of course you can, but not really a requirement as such. I live in the US, send my PR application after getting ITA in March. What are the next steps after passing the background checks? What document will I need to travel to Canada? Once your application is, of course, unless IRCC has any issues with your application, they will ask you to provide additional documents. If not, they will approve your application, and to approve your application, they will send you a passport request. Once you get a passport request, you will need to send your passport, if you are from a visa-required country, to Ottawa. You can send it through FedEx. Make sure you send a return self-addressed label for your return shipment as well. Once they will stamp your passport with the visa and your COPR, they will issue it to you with a hard copy. They will courier your passports back using your self-addressed envelope. And once you get your passport back, it will have an expiry date on your COPR and the visa. You must enter Canada before that date to activate your permanent resident status, after which you will become permanent resident of Canada. And your requirements are to maintain your residency obligation and be crime free. And therefore, then after 3 years, you would be eligible to apply for the citizenship. Prikshit Rana says, changes of knock approval for spouse open work permit extension. My job matches 4 to 7. One non-match duty say may supervise. Alternatives, if any. Well, the one non-match duty which says may is not a mandatory requirement, in the sense like, as far as knock code matches are concerned, the mandatory duties must match, and any discretionary duties which starts with may need not match, and they will not create any problem, so you should be fine. Can I get an extension letter for spouse open work permit extension? Can I get an extension letter for spouse open work permit extension? I don't know what that means. What's your opinion for STEM draw? I'm at 485. I'm a PA and on spouse open work permit. My opinion on STEM draw is that they might be a draw. That's my opinion. I don't know when. I can't say how many invitations. Then therefore, I do not have an idea on the draw, though I expect it to be in 470s, 480s kind of a number. Can I get an extension letter for spouse open work permit extension? Usually not. They don't issue extension letters for spouse open work permit extensions. You can always call IRCC and have them send you an email confirming your maintained status, and then you can use that. May 13, waiting for P2 for a month. I need to travel next week urgently. Can I travel with PA1? What is the safest option? The safest option obviously is to continue staying in Canada. But if you are leaving Canada, make sure you inform IRCC. And if you're leaving, and if you get a P2 when you're outside Canada, P2, and then you cannot confirm it, right? With P2, you cannot tell IRCC you are currently in Canada. So you'll have to tell them you are outside Canada. And then you can return back to Canada and then confirm your P2. But in whatever sense, in whatever direction, if it so happens that you have left Canada and then you get your COPR, then you'll have to apply for PRTD to return back. What happened to OINP Master's Graduate Stream? When can I expect one? If so, what will be the minimum score? I don't know the minimum score for Master's Graduate Stream. I guess whenever it does happen, it will be very high. Why and what is happening? Ontario's quotas have been cut by 50%. They are already squirming with frustration with the reduced quotas, and they are now being very, very selective in how they process their nominations. So I do not know if there will be another one, any one draw or not. I mean, if it does happen, the scores might remain high, and I don't expect too many draws for that matter. Expected STEM cutoff, I think in the range of 470, 480s, because largely engineers, only cybersecurity is included. So yeah, 470s, 480s maybe. Company applied for closed work permit and got ITA. Now, how to inform IRCC to consider in progress work permit, closed work permit application as bridge over? You can't change a closed work permit to open work, or ongoing closed work permit to open work permit. That you can't do. So you will have to wait for your work permit to be approved, then apply for bridge open work permit. Work permit expires August 23, CRS score 501, remote job in Canada. Can I go to India on implied status and work remotely there? Yes, you can. Once you leave Canada, you don't have any implied status anymore. So yes, absolutely. So there is no implied status once you leave Canada. It completely finishes off. And from outside Canada, you can absolutely work for an employer in Canada. It would be foreign work experience. Is Canada work experience letter enough, or they also need bank stat? What is bank stat? Statement. Salary slip. I was working as article student. I was getting cash stipend. No, experience letter is not enough. Proof of salary, proof of payment is quite important. Provide pay stubs. You can get a cash salary certificate as well. Cash salary always a bit of a credibility issues, but you can. Working as a recce. I have no idea what it means. Can I get 50 points in COQ for having recce certification from College of Early Childhood Education? No, unfortunately, no. Only trade categories and some specific other engineering categories are part of the certificate of qualification. You can see it on IRCC website. They have a long list, and unfortunately, College of Early Childhood Education does not qualify there. Can I go after P2 before COPR? Yes, you can. Again, as I was saying earlier, once you go back and you get your COPR, then you will have to apply for PRTD before you can return back to your home country. I already have a Canadian visitor visa. Will I still need to send my passport to get the PR visa stamp and enter to Canada? Yes, you will. Even if you have a visit visa, it doesn't matter. It's not an immigrant visa. You will need to send your passport along. If you are from a visa required country, it's not negotiable. You have to send your passport for visa stamping, and then they will send it along with the COPR back to you. Not declaring 2015 2018 experience as no extra points. I already have 3 years of experience. Any issues? Cash stipend. I do not know what you mean by cash stipend, but any issues? As in no issues. If you're not disclosing it, please make sure you include it in your personal history. Don't not disclose it. You must include it in your personal history. And as far as salary is concerned, you should try to provide proof of salary and pay stubs. In your case, if it is cash salary, then payment vouchers, cash vouchers, salary vouchers, salary certificate. All of these can help you establish the cash salary payment. Right. That's all I have for questions. Thank you so much for joining in. Loved doing it. We'll do it again. Until next time, stay forever hopeful for sure, of course, and continue to follow IRCC website for more details as they happen, because I do anticipate a lot of changes as we move forward again. Yeah, stay forever hopeful, and I stay forever hopeful, and I shall see you next time. Take care.